All right. Hey, friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tori, and tonight I have a familiar face back on the channel tonight. I'm very excited about it. We have Krystle Matar, Spiffbo finalist, Grimdark romance author of The Tainted Dominion. Krystle, thank you so much for joining us yet again.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's been a while, I think.
It has. Yeah. February.
The last time I was here, I just moved. So
yeah.
Now I'm settled in and my shelves look really good. So
they do look very good. I've been enjoying the Twitter updates of the bookshelves as we've gone on this summer.
Yeah, so. They're already really full, and I've already had to move books to a second shelf. So it's like I moved here and I was like, that's it, I'm buying books. That's the end of it.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I just recently bought a 4th bookshelf for my bedroom, and it's, I mean, I need another one already. So I'm like, well, whoops.
Yeah, somehow when you open up the space, you just are more tempted to fill the space immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't have an empty bookshelf. That's really sad.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
it looks weird.
Absolutely, Kay.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of jump in with introducing your series for anybody that's in the chat or is watching the replay that is not familiar with Tainted Dominion. Can you just give us a brief author pitch of what it's about?
I forgot to do that because I'm just so comfortable here.
Well, I love that.
Yeah. So the first one in the installment, I haven't gotten good at this yet, is Legacy of the Brightwatch. It is a Spiffle finalist from 2 cycles ago now. Yeah, because we're on 9.
Yeah.
So 2 cycles ago, I was a finalist. And then, so it's kind of grimdark, although like the real grimdark connoisseurs question if it's dark enough, so I feel very seen. It's a little bit romantic, but not over the top, I guess, depending on who you ask. And then it just kind of blends that gas lamp, Victorian vibe with some deep questions about the human condition and the cost of convenience. And it's really just a light book, I swear. And the second one came out this year, Legacy of Brick and Bone. It is the follow-up to Brightwash. And that book nearly killed me because it was really hard to follow up Brightwash. Yeah. And that's it for now. Oh, I've also got a story in Alchemy of Sorrow that ties into the Dominion. It's from Ishmael's point of view, for anyone who knows.
I'm gonna need to check that out.
That one was a lot of fun to write. He's kind of a drama queen, so it's very grounded in its emotions.
Just a
little bit. And then there's another one coming up soon in it's called Anatomy of Fear, which is like fantasy, but it bleeds into horror as well. The pitch was body horror, so some of us are more fantasy and some of them are like super horror, so be mindful.
Good range.
And
yeah,
I think Holly arranged them so that the more fantasy stuff is up front and it gets darker as you go. So it's like if you get to a point where you're like, nope, too much, you can just stop.
Kind of either that or it's going to be like the frog in the frying pan kind of thing.
Right. And then by the end, you don't even know that you're cooked. Exactly. And so that one's from Laszlo's point of view. For anybody who read Brick and Bone, they'll know that name. And that is actually it.
So what I'm hearing is it's grimdark depending on who you ask, and romance depending on who you ask, and or cozy depending on who you ask.
No, I missed cozy for sure.
I don't, there's some pie baking and things that
it wanted to be slice of life really badly, but the slice of the life is pretty rough.
Yeah, Connor, I'll have you know that slow burn murdered me in cold blood. Yeah, it is an excellent slow burn. I will definitely agree with that.
Thank you. You'll find I'm really bad at taking compliments, so every time it happens, there's just gonna be a lot of squirming.
That's okay. I'm the same way, but I'm still gonna give them to you.
Okay. That's mean. I'll get you back. I'm gonna come back on here to bully you when your book's out.
Oh no. Channel takeover with Krystle.
Yeah, exactly.
Andrew Meredith in the chat.
Heyo.
And okay, threshold for horror. Yep, you can continue at your own risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about kind of going back, especially to writing process, because something you and I have talked about a little bit is that we're both discovery writers in a sense.
Yep.
And I would love to delve into that a little bit with you, because I feel like it's not, lots of people talk about being discovery writers or pantsers or whatever, you know, you want to term it. But I don't think a lot of people give out really practical advice for discovery writers. So when you start your books, what does that process look like? How do you stay organized as a discovery writer?
So actually, not all that long ago, I would have said I have no idea, because it's been so long since I started from scratch. But I've just started like a brand new world, brand new storyline, and so I'm going through this because Brightwash. I drafted what kind of was a really sparse draft that's going to be 3 books. So even now, as I do the 3rd book, I'm not drafting from scratch. It's still a revision. So I would have said, I don't know. But talking to other writers, just kind of about mental health and the ability to pivot in this ever-changing market, I decided to go ahead with another idea instead of fixating only on the Dominion. So I've started from scratch for the first time in 7 years.
Wow.
And I have to say it's an interesting difference. Like, the draft that was Brightwash is so bad because I had to tell myself, don't worry about it, just finish it. Just finish it, just finish it. So I would like decide, okay, such and such character needed to die like 10,000 words ago, and I would just keep going as if that had really happened. And so it's unreadable to anyone except me, because I can see where I made these decisions. But drafting from scratch with Frankie and his world has been much more deliberate. So that, because, you know, with everything that I've learned, it's a matter of knowing, okay, this is a mistake and I need to go back and fix it without getting into my head of restarting over every little problem. So there's like a balance there between, this is a big problem that'll take me forever to fix later, or this is a tiny problem and I can let it go. So all of that is to say is, it depends on where in the process you are as a writer, I think. Because you need to take some time to figure out your instincts and to figure out which instincts to trust. And so when I drafted the book that would be Brightwash, I didn't have any scope of what my ability to revise would look like. I didn't know, you know, it was just a matter of, I need to finish a book so that I can fix it, because I'd spent so many years not finishing projects.
Right.
So all of that is to say that I make a lot of notes about thoughts that I'm having as I go. And it used to be that I would put them in the draft, like the draft that was Brightwash. It would be like, this is stupid, you have to fix it later. or sometimes I would drop myself a note of, you know, this world building is missing XYZ tension. So we can come back, and I would make like a list of like ideas that I would pull from other stories. That is like, if I want it to feel like this moment in this book, so I could like draft in this horrible, messy way, but also have like these little crumbs that I would leave for myself inevitably, you know, however many months later when I could come back. And then now with Frankie, I put them in a notebook. And so I have, do I have it here? No, I don't. I don't have his, but I have, no, that's too many spoilers. Okay. But yeah, the one I have on hand is for book 3. So yeah, no, I can't do it. But I kind of do like a little magpie nest of media that inspires me. Is like, what goals am I reaching for from this story? Like, what other stories like it? What kind of feelings did they invoke? And for this one, the new one, it's the movie The Departed is a big inspiration. Like, it's so off the wall bananas with all the crossing and double crossing that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
The movie Legend with Tom Hardy, that's a prohibition movie. Or no, not Legend. Yeah, it's Legend, is it? So many of his movies are like single word titles.
Is that the one where he plays the twins?
Yeah, that's the wrong one. Okay, what's it called then? Legend, you're right. Legend is the one where he plays the twins. There's one where he's a prohibition rum runner or something. Okay. And now I have to Google.
It's gonna bother us all if we don't know what it is. Shout out to Tom Hardy, though, honestly.
Yeah, a lot of his stuff is really... But another inspiration is all the Lahaney novels that I read, where he writes these thrillers that are... Oh, Connor said it. Lawless.
Yep.
Thank you, Connor. Now I can put my phone away. But Dennis Lehane writes these thrillers, and he branched off to do historical fiction for a short series, where like it's really hard to describe the way he writes, but it's like he writes really violent books. Like, they're really, but it's never shocking. It's always like, yeah, that makes sense for these people. And it always feels like, you know, you're sitting at a bar with someone you trust, but you don't know him very well. And he's leaning in to tell you a story, and you know it's going to be a really good story, so you're excited. And then he drops the most brutal, bat crazy stuff on your shoulders, and you're like, wow, that's great. I'm so glad you told me that. And you're like looking for exits, you know? And it's just such a fascinating way to drop violence. Like, it's so matter of fact, but the small details that he focuses on, like, are really powerful.
Yeah.
And so none of those are fantasy, but I'm writing fantasy. So then the rest of the inspiration is magic.
Yeah.
So anyway, this little magpie file of specific scenes and different vibes that it's like, I want to do that. And I know I'm not going to get anywhere close because these guys are masters, but I want to try.
Yeah. Well, I would give yourself a little bit more credit than that, because I mean, it was funny because after I read Legacy of the Brightwash, oh gosh, was that last year? I think so. I remember getting to the end of it, and what I loved so much about it was just the incredible characterization. And I knew as soon as I started working on Bloodstones, I was like, I want Krystle to read my book just for the characters so that she can help me with that.
I'm so lucky because I'm enjoying it so much.
Thank you.
I think you've already got like such a good eye for like pacing and the appropriate level of world building and like just kind of feeding the right amount of information. So like it never slows down, but it never like, I never feel lost, which is really hard to do in fantasy. Like it's such a weird thing that we all have to do.
I hope so.
Yeah. And well, so I mean,
you know how that is, because we're writing these massive scope stories with all these moving parts and characters, and you write, it was so cute when I sent you the word count, because you called it, I think, a baby chunk is how you referred to it.
Like, yeah.
Because Brightwash and Brick and Bone is even bigger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you write chunks.
Brightwatch is 220, and it's my small book. Brick and Bone finished at 340.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like 2 novels longer than Brightwash.
Well, because that was I was wondering, like, how, because I'm finding it difficult enough in my 150 barely to like keep all of the threads connected and make sure I don't miss anything. So how do you keep track of everything and make sure you're not like missing pieces that you've left in even sometimes a book ago?
Well, I'm only 2 books in, so that remains to be seen. But I think part of it is how it came in layers. Like each thing came slowly and kind of individually. Like the first thing I had was Joshua.
Yep.
And Jason and Laura. Most of those characters are people that I've written about before, so I knew them, and I was confident in my ability to explain them. And then so the next thing was the world, and it's like Toshway won't fit in fully medieval fantasy, although I love it. It's not right for him. He needed a little bit further along, and I really love Gaslamp fantasy, and BBC's Ripper Street is a show that I watch kind of at least once a year. I get a full binge watch in, and it's just such an interesting vibe where things were approaching familiarity, but some things were also like really off the wall strange to our common sensibilities or our current. So anyway, in layers. And then as I was writing the story, I was like, I wanted to bring in those older drafts of Toshway where he was a homicide detective. One of my favorite books that I wrote for him was when he was kind of chasing a serial killer, although he was no longer an active police officer, so he broke a lot of laws. And I wanted to keep that vibe somehow without while also, talking about magic and, because I love fantasy, I really do. Even though I just listed a bunch of influences that aren't fantasy. So each thing got its focus. Some things were familiar, so they were easy. And then the newer things, it was like, I remember doing a revision pass of just like, okay, I need to focus on figuring out the rules of talent, because I had some conflicting, information in earlier drafts. And I was like, no, I got to sort this out. So it's like, I read through and I flagged things that didn't match and wrote myself questions of like, how did this slip through, you dolt? So layers is my very long-winded answer that
that's okay.
I would deal with one problem at a time, because if I dealt with it all, I would never have finished. But it's like, okay, I got to break this into chunks, and I just got to deal with, okay, this storyline is the most broken, so let me fix it. And then as I fixed it, it lifted up everything around it. And the more layers I put down, the more stable it was as a story.
Yeah. Well, and it's got to be kind of cool to look back and see that evolution of the character and the
it's wild to look at those old drafts and go like, man, this is a different story. Like there was a version where Stella died at the end, right? And I mean, I know it's kind of a spoiler that she doesn't, but it's also not. Like it is a romance story. Like we're working towards HFN eventually. You just gotta be patient with me. But yeah, so like that story was completely different. Caradwin's story arc after her
Yep.
mother died was like that that one was really dark. Like where I went with her, like she was resurrecting dead people and like using their bodies as puppets with her talent. Like that's why I say Brightwatch is not that dark. Like y'all, it could have been way worse.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Necromancer Caradwin would have been kind of awesome, to be honest.
It is. I did like it. I liked it a lot, and in fact, like I'm sad that we didn't get to go there. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, it that version of it was so hopeless that I wasn't having fun anymore. So it's like it was fun with the puppets, the the body puppets, but at the same time, it was like I had to psych myself up to work on it because it's like there's nothing to hold on to in this story.
Yeah.
And I'm tired. So that's we saved Stella, and it changed the tone of the rest of the books. Although I mean, Brick and Bone still got pretty dark. So
I know I'm honestly kind of terrified to read it.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, oh, am I ready for this? I don't know.
I'm not sure I was ready.
Well, and I mean, it's such a cool, one of the fun parts about being in such a tight-knit community like we are in the indie circles is that, like, it's so much fun to watch people's progress because you've been posting a lot on Twitter. Sorry, X. You've been posting a lot on Twitter about, like, we kind of got to watch you go through Brick and Bone. And all it's such a cool like little window, I think, into author spaces and getting to see that process. So I thought I loved I was like, oh, what's Krystle up to today?
No, and it like that accountability helps on a personal level too. Just as like, I'm having a conversation with myself and my work, and so I can shake it off and get back to work.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, because I was going to ask you, at what point in your process do you start to bring in other people, other eyes on the book?
It was a few revisions on Brightwash before I sent it because, the first one was really bad. And then, there was a couple of versions where I was trying to figure out. So it takes a while before I'm ready. Now with the new project with Frankie, I suspect once I complete a draft, it will actually be ready for eyes because I've been revising as I go.
Yeah.
So, I go until I'm so annoyed that I have to think about why I'm annoyed. And sometimes that feeling goes away. Sometimes it's just like the brain yips of like, I'll never write a book again. And then, you take a nap, you have a snack, and then you're fine.
Yep.
But sometimes that feeling is because I can feel something is janky with the pacing. And I know enough about what I want from that book that I can fix it at this point. So I'm a discovery pantser in that, or a discovery writer in that I have to write to figure out what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And then once I figure it out, I can go back and revise and then keep going. And then I get another, 10, 20, 30,000 words in and I go, I've messed something up again. Yep. So at this rate, I'm pretty solidly confident with the first 20K of Frankie's story. And I suspect it'll keep building like that in chunks that are like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And by the time I get to the end, I'll probably just send it to people that I trust to be like, what am I not seeing? Because that's what you need people for. It's like you can do a lot of work into a book, but you're going to have blind spots because it's your baby, but also because you know what you intended.
Right.
And so if you intended for this to be very clear and you've got all the world building in here that you've done, 16 times and you have your notes, you can read that on its face and go, yeah, that's perfectly clear because you have all the,
Yep.
but there's a very good chance that somebody who can't see the inside of your head because they're not mind readers like a bunch of losers isn't gonna meet you there. And so if they don't get what you're trying to say, that's the opportunity to double down and just sort it out and figure it out. But also people will come up with questions that I never even thought to try to answer.
Yep.
So I'm trying to think of something offhand, but it's been so long since I betaed with anything that, you know, like relationship dynamics, it's like, I might think that that's a totally natural thing.
Yeah.
But a beta reader will be like, why are they okay with this? And I'm like, you know what? Good question. Let me figure that out. And that's the same for world building or anything. Like, to use you as an example, now I'm going to try to be careful not to spoil anything, but I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the main character's dad, it mentions he's married a third time, like their stepmother.
The second time,
not
yeah.
Their mother. Oh,
yep.
Second time, yeah.
Second time, yep.
And so with fantasy, that could mean plural wives, or that could mean only like monogamy, like we're familiar with, or it can mean any number of things.
Yep.
And to me, although it was great, it wasn't entirely clear to me when the king was talking about more heirs. Could he just have a second, third, fourth wife? Does he need to off this wife first? Like, what are the rules?
Yep.
You know, a little bit of Henry VIII. Like, what are the rules? And so long as the rules are presented, I'm there for it. It's just a matter of showing people very quietly, this is what to expect. So that if they do the opposite of what to expect, they're like, oh, that's strange. Or if they do exactly what to expect, you're like, yeah, that guy's steady. And those things aren't necessarily obvious while we're working on it, because you know what your marriage conventions are in your work.
Yeah.
But with fantasy, you could go any direction. I don't know. So it's fun to play with those.
And I don't know about you, but I feel like for all of us, we kind of have our areas of our comfort zones or our initial emphases within our writing, right? Where we'll you know, like my first pass through my book is usually very heavily character and dialogue focused, and the world building is kind of secondary. And I think that's something where then I have to go back through and be like, okay, so now I have to explain how all of this works in the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My focus is often like the beats happening and the things that people are saying. So I notice that a lot when I'm working on Frankie, where it's like beats are happening really fast. And there's not really any room for characters to, well, they're reacting, but there's no interplay between the character and the reader.
Yeah.
That shows how they're feeling. Like, sometimes there'll be quite a number of pages of dialogue where, you know, they're bickering. And then I have to go back and go, hey, what he said was really rude. How does he feel about saying that about his best friend? Like, is he actually okay with that? Or does he know he's out of bounds? And just kind of, it's almost like I see it first, and then I go back and figure out, okay, well, how much of a jerk are you? Like, is that okay with you or not?
Right.
So definitely each pass gets its own focus of like, okay, we got the beats down, but then also, how about the emotional crisis that goes with this horrible thing that you just did? But I mean, and if there's no emotional crisis, that's character work too.
Exactly. Yeah, we meant to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, he feels nothing about this.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like, and this person still thinks of him as their best friend. Honey, that's a red flag. Like, what's up with you?
A little bit,
You're okay with this. Yeah, right? Like, so it's all character work if you just let yourself, like, and it's all world building too. Like, if you just let yourself sink into the, but I can't always see the spots where I haven't sunk far enough.
Right. Yeah. And it's so helpful too, because, you know, obviously we can't get out of our own heads, and we've been staring at these things for sometimes years, right? Or some version of it for years. And, you know, sometimes it'll be the most basic comments and you're just like, oh, you're right. How did I miss that?
Well, and the other thing is, like, us revisionists, like, if we change a scene a couple of times, maybe that information was in there 6 drafts ago and we cut it and didn't replace it with anything, and we don't remember because we remember writing it, so it's there, but it's not there anymore.
Oh, did I? And it's so funny because I feel like sometimes a trap that we fall into as newer authors is the need to defend the intentions a little bit, where, you know, and it's hard when you first start getting those first critiques and somebody says, well, this isn't really clear. And I think our instinct is often to come back with, well, yes, it is, because, you know, I have it all up here. How do you not know that? Like, it's right there.
But I find every comment is an opportunity to decide if you want to clarify.
Yes.
So, you know, just as a reader, when I'm going through, if a question occurs to me, you know, halfway through a conversation, I'm going to put it in, and then I scroll down, and, you know, half the page later, oh, that's answered. Oh, okay. But I'm still going to leave that question there so that you know when it's occurring to me. And if you want me thinking that at that point, great. But if you want me thinking that 2 chapters ago, then there's an opportunity there to go back up. Or if I've guessed something that you don't want me to guess yet, it's an opportunity to go, I need to add another red herring. And so everything, or it's exactly what you want from me and you can leave it. But every opportunity, or every comment, is an opportunity to consider if you want to clarify, change, or whatever. And then you can go forward knowing that you made choices intentionally. And I think that's the best shield against when your book hits readers that don't fit you. When your book hits readers that it's like, this book is not for me. At least you go forward knowing, that's not for you, but I wouldn't have written this book any different. So I'm okay with it not being for you, even though, because then it's just like, I made that choice. So
and I think that's a place that, you know, it's a journey that every writer, I think, goes on, and it varies how far we get, I think. Just knowing, you know, at some point you have to trust your own instincts enough to be confident in what you've put out, and know that not every reader is going to be a 5-star gush fest, and you know, which can be hard because you want it's like sending your kid to school for the first day, right? You're like, oh, I want everyone to just love them, and
as much as I love them. Exactly. But it's a rough world out there, and, you know, we're all super different, and we all come from, you know, different expectations, different hopes and dreams, like different novel inspiration. And so it's inevitable that our little book babies don't work for everybody, but, you know, that's okay. Like, that's actually the beauty of this business, because it's like, on the flip side of it, if you gave 20 writers a 1-sentence prompt, they'll come up with 20 different stories. And for sure, any given reader will be able to go through that and find the stories that really speak to them. And that's what's cool about the business. Like, we're all kind of vibing in our own little, you know, sandboxes. And when we find people that see what we like, or see like what we're up to, it's really great. And when people don't vibe with it, that's fine. It's fine. It's not a reflection on you as a person. It's not a reflection on them as a person. It's just the business.
Right. Yep. And I think, I mean, we talked a little bit about that before we went live, and kind of delving into the balance between learning how to trust that writer's instinct and intuition versus exploring the critiques you're given, and that discernment we need to learn. So, and you had some really great thoughts on that I wanted to make sure we shared.
Yeah. So that, I guess that's referring back to SPIFBO and the year that Brightwatch was a finalist. And it's something that I've been thinking about as Cycle 9 barrels toward finalist season. And my heart really goes out to all of you guys waiting for answers.
It's fine. We're all fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're fine. I believe it. But I was thinking about it a lot lately, just kind of as my time between who I am and my finalist year expands. And being a SPIFBO finalist teaches you really fast how to deal with critique. And that is, don't internalize it and don't say anything rude. Krystle's life rules for your career. That's it.
Excellent. I love it.
And then but also, you know, there's a lot of talk about critical reviews and engaging with them and learning from them. And that one's a little bit harder, just because I agree that reviews are for readers. They're not our spaces. Unless we're invited in and we're comfortable engaging, it's not for us. But critical reviews on already published books are challenging, because it's like there's only so much we can do, right? Like, if it's really bad, we can pull them, but you know, if it's a pacing problem, like how many times can you revise one book?
Right.
So I was thinking about it recently, and critical reviews, and actually at first in my early SPIFBO years, it was like, well, I can't do anything, so why would I, you know, engage? But we must remember that we're going to publish more books, right? And so, just speaking on my own personal experience, the biggest pushback on Brightwash during its finalist year was the pacing. It's a big book, and it's a slow burn book. And there's a lot going on, and like there's a lot of different plot threads, and some people feel like I dropped the most interesting plot thread, which is the murder mystery. And if you're coming to Brightwatch exclusively for the murder mystery, then yeah, I get why it feels that way, because I went in a lot of different directions, and then it converges at the end. And so the feedback is whether or not that convergence is worth it, and some people feel like it's not. And the thing about that is everyone is right in their opinions. The books they wanted to read versus the book they got, if that doesn't match, that you know, that's on me, you know, managing expectations and the choices that I made. But at the same time, I can't change Brightwatch.
Right.
It's published. So there's only so much I can do with regards to critical reviews, and it certainly helps how I can market Brightwatch going forward. I have to kind of signal that there's a lot going on. It's not just a murder mystery, but that book's not changing. It's done.
Right.
However, I've started a new series now, and I'm remembering that the biggest hurdle to people buying and enjoying Brightwash is the size and the pacing. So now I have the opportunity to make a choice, because I know for a fact that, you know, Brightwash could be selling better if it was shorter and tighter. But I made those choices intentionally. That's the book I wanted to write. I'm not changing it. But the next book I want to write, what do I want to do? Do I want to hit the same things again and write these big giant books every single time I launch new careers, or do I want to? You're right. The answer is no. I don't want to do that, because it's exhausting. It's expensive, and it takes forever for me to publish giant books. So with all of those critiques in mind from well-meaning people who just want to read good indie books, it's like, okay, well, what can I do in my skill set to hit a different market with my next series? And that choice is going to be, okay, I'm giving myself a hard cap. I'm not going over 150,000 words. Let's see if I can do it. That means I got to keep a tight focus, which is why those thrillers come in as big influences, because they run a gauntlet. Like they just drop you and they don't let go until you're done. And I admire that. I read a lot of thrillers. Like when I'm too tired for a fantasy, I will pick up a thriller because they don't make me think that hard, but also like they get me really invested, like really fast. It's a skill. And so all of those reviews were right and they were true. And while that doesn't impact what happens with Brightwash so much, it does impact what's going to happen with my next series. And so I can now make choices deliberately. I can make informed choices. I can try new things. And I think that's what people are talking about a lot when they're talking about engaging with critical reviews, where, you know, they're not going to rewrite that book, but what are you going to do next? And if you want to keep writing giant chonky novels, Godspeed to you. But now you know what hurdles that puts in front of you. Right. And I think as a career, having longevity in the career is being cognizant of what hurdles you're choosing. Yes. And whether or not you have the stamina to keep jumping over that hurdle over and over again with one book. And then also, as you write more books, like which hurdles are you going to choose for the next book? Because there's going to be some every single time. Right. Yeah. I would rather know exactly which hurdles I'm going to hit and just write the best book I can that leaps over those hurdles, hopefully, than have no clue what people are going to say. So I think it's good. I think it's especially when people are writing really thoughtful reviews about how the book made them feel and why they felt that way. Yeah. I think if you've got kind of the mental and emotional armor to engage with that and not internalize it, it's really helpful as a choice for the longevity of your career. And I'm not going to say it was easy to take those reviews because, you know, Brightwatch was a brand new baby. It wasn't even a year old when it was a finalist. So it was a rude awakening to the world of publishing. But I mean, the nice thing about SPIFBO is it's so controlled that you know what's expected of you. You know, it's, you know, we're here, we're having our books judged, people are judging their books, they are writing honest reviews, sometimes scathing reviews, but I mean, and that's harder to find in the indie world. Yes. But knowing ahead of time that it's going to happen makes it a lot easier to face it. Exactly. So you go through the little gauntlet or the giant gauntlet and you just kind of, you emerge from it knowing what you want as a career. And I'm grateful, even though at the times it really hurt. It made me tougher and you've got to be tough if you're going to do this for 20, 30 years, right? Like, I can't imagine, you know, going through all of this without the knowledge that I'm going to get kicked around sometimes. And certainly I've been lucky outside of SPIFBO where people have really liked Brightwatch, but if they don't, man, they don't. It's not on me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things that I try to encourage other authors with is that, you know, getting reviews from people who don't love your book is not a reflection on you as a person or the fact that you chose to write a book that you really loved. Like that, nobody can ever take that from you, you know? Yeah. And I think too, one of the unique positions we have in the self-publishing world is like for you, you have your big chunky fantasy series And then you're
Yeah.
able to pivot immediately and say, well, what if I
Yeah.
want to try 150,000 word,
Yeah.
you know, different thing completely.
And even that for a thriller is really long. So like,
Yeah.
I'm aware. But that's why I'm in fantasy, baby. That's normal for fantasy.
Yep. I'm sitting over here like, it's great. It's normal.
Yeah, you're about 140, I think, aren't you? Like,
Yeah. Well,
so
I think I'm at 145 after I added that last chapter in part 3. Yeah. I'm close. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, in the thriller world, that's a chonker.
Yeah.
You know, the Dennis Lehane novel that I'm thinking of, Live by Night, is, oh, I did the math, but now I forgot. I think it's 130. And for a thriller, that's quite long, but he's historical, so they run a little longer. But even that, like, oh, I don't have it. It's over there. It's such a skinny little spine. It looks so funny next to his other book.
It's so funny because I talk to people a lot that are, you know, outside of our community that might even still be readers just of other genres or what have you. And it cracks me up because only in the fantasy world are we like 400 or 500 pages. It's like a weekend read. Yeah.
That's the only genre that says stuff like that. I've joked about it before. Like, nowhere else. In other genres, that's 3 books.
Exactly. Yep. And you know, there's a tiny part of me, like I wrote a short story for an anthology that's coming out later this year, a few months back, and did a complete pivot. And because Bloodstones is, you know, epic fantasy, and as you know, it is very exhausting to write those. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a complete pivot. I'm gonna try something in first person. I'm gonna challenge myself and just you know, play with something completely random. And I found that it was such a good exercise for me to contain. And I'm like, I have 5,500 words and I'm used to 150. Right. And I was like, oh man, like how do I, especially when my brain is so in Bloodstone's 150 plus thousand, you know, can go farther. How do I even finagle my brain to focus on that small of a space? But I think it's so good for you.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
It is. Even my short stories in the anthologies, the Ishmael one, just hit the upper limit, because we were limited to 10K, and it's like 9,900 words or something like that. The horror one, I'm sorry, Holly, I'm so sorry. She told me 10K. She said maybe 12 if you can't cut it down, and I finished at 14,000 words. So I'm saying that other people were short, so I'm still within the budget of the overall book.
Right. Right. Yeah,
that was a stretch for me, keeping that. Like, there was a while that it was at 20K, and I think just the knowledge that poor Holly would have a stroke because of me is like, I gotta get it down. I'm sorry, Holly.
I gotta fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I promise everybody in the chat, I promise I'll get to your questions. The going through revisions and so using that short story is a great example.
Yeah.
How do you go about looking at, okay, I have a 20,000 word story and you've gotten it back down to 14.
Yeah.
How do you go through and decide, here's what's important, this is what I can cut? Like, are there certain things you look for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, for Laszlo's story, my biggest challenge with him was imparting, because it ties into the Dominion. So imparting enough of the world that somebody who has no idea who I am is able to follow me where I'm going, because there's talk about talent and what it does. But at the same time, this was not the opportunity to like do a bunch of new world building. Space. And I think that's where I ended up where I did too much world building for Laszlo's backstory. And And so if it had been a something that, you know, I sold myself as a novella for the series, I would have left it.
Yeah.
But since it was tying into this anthology, it felt extraneous in that it didn't add to the beats of the story. And the beats of that story were him grappling with, ooh, how much can I say without spoiling? So him grappling with the kind of man he wants to be. And I say man with an asterisk because he's a 14-year-old boy in this story. And people who read Brick and Bone knows where he ends up. He's not a well person, but that was my opportunity to show how he got there. And so it had to be the focus, and it had to be a really strict focus of him versus his father and him versus himself. And so anything that was extraneous in the ways of world building out the city, you know, because it takes place in the same city as Brightwatch, as in Yalesmere, all of those details got cut away really, really fast because they didn't feed into those two verses. It was him versus himself, him versus his dad. And so it was like a sentence by sentence. Does this feed versus himself or versus his dad? And if the answer was no, it had to go. And so I added in a little bit, actually, extra world building. So I cut back and then I added back in. But the only thing extra they added in was him versus his dad. So that struggle made sense. And then I just had to be brutal with all the really pretty things that I said about the water. And you know, there was a couple of paragraphs about the city and how chaotic it was. And it's like, this is not helpful. It's just, you kind of have to decide, you know, what is the story trying to say? And if you're on a budget, you have to be tough with yourself about these extra ideas. Although obviously I'm not a big advocate for budgets, and sometimes like that stuff, you know, the world building is what Brightwatch is known for, so it's definitely something that I enjoy and I advocate for. But on a word count budget, you've got to be meaner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the nice part is, you know, where we're working within these big worlds that have multiple stories attached to them, you can kind of file it away in your little deleted scenes folder. And
right. Well, and it'll feed in later, because, you know, I have ideas for Laszlo later in the series, where he goes back to the area on the map where he comes from, with Lorne and with, anyway. So he goes back and we follow him back with other characters. And so all of those ideas that have been built out in that story but taken away are now in my head because I got to draft them. And that's where the Discovery Writer thing comes in, where it's like I would not have considered those questions had I not done that short story. So now that I've considered them and I know them and they're away in my draft somewhere, I can use them later in this series when we go down. It's like a bayou, like swamp, Gatorland, right? So all of those details that were so claustrophobic in the short story get to play out in the wider series, and I'm really excited to do that just because I got to spend that time with him.
So I do want to make sure that I'm not leaving everybody in the chat stranded. So Kay wanted to know, did you get the hardcovers done so your books would truly be bricked? Also, I would love for you to show off those beautiful.
I got the hardcovers done specifically so that I could do this art, because I really hate it. And Andrew, I owe you a book. And I'll get, as soon as I have more Brightwatch, I'm going to send one to you. But I did it so I could get these extra. I don't have a Brightwatch because I've already sent it out. It was sold and spoken for. But this gorgeous art that Faye Lane did. And so she put the quote on the back. Let me see if it'll. Yeah, I guess it's inverted, so that doesn't help.
It looks fine on my end.
It's a quote from when he's kind of grappling with his complicity. Is that a word? It's a word.
Yeah.
In the greater system, and so both quotes on Brightwash and Brick and Bone feed into that theme of him grappling with the crimes that he's committed because he's complicit. And so this is why
they're so pretty.
I'm so happy. I'm so lucky that Faye was able to squeeze me into her schedule. So that's why.
It's gotta be so cool to have that moment where you've worked so hard on this book, you've seen it in its regular like published form, and then you get to do something really special like that with it. That's got to be a really cool feeling.
Yeah, and I can't wait to send them out. Like, I've got a little list of people in my head that I'm going to send some to, and then they're available to anyone shipping to the US. Silverstone Books has them, and they'll be shipping out at the end of September. Now, I know it gets complicated for people outside the US, so I'm going to figure something out, but eventually Amazon should stock them properly. I'm just worried that people ordering now are going to get the version of Brightwash with the stupid gray cover that I really hate. But if anyone buying Brick and Bone will get the nice hardcovers. So yeah.
I mean, this is the Russian roulette we play with Amazon as authors, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Let's see. Andrew says, can you talk about the process of updating your editions of your books? Like, what made you decide to do that, and like what goes into that?
One of the reasons that I did it is because immediately after when I was looking at publishing Brightwatch, I swear to God there was not an option for this for these. And like immediately after their next update, they had stuff where people were doing like these really gorgeous case laminates, and I was like, and the digital paper versions, or digital cloth that they call it, look so
they're
lame,
not great,
and it bugged me. Yeah, it bugged me for such a long time. So when I knew Brick and Bone was coming down the pipeline, and I saw people doing these gorgeous jacketed case laminate hardcovers through Ingram, I was like, okay, I need to figure out who's going to do my art. And Brad's cover, like some people are just putting their covers down without all the words, and it's just the art that they commission, and they look really good. But like I was looking at it, and the thing about the way Brad did it is that the way he put the title on, it's part of the art. So taking it off, actually, it left a really weird space. So then I was thinking, okay, like what else can I do? And at first, I was thinking about character art for Tasha and Stella, but then I was like, but what about the rest of this series? So it just became like this long drawn out, much overthought situation where I was like looking at artists. And then on Twitter, somebody did a cover reveal for like kind of a gothic romance about a haunted house. And the cover hit me like a physical blow, and I was like, who did that? I need that. and it was Faye. So I just reached out to her saying like, hey, could you maybe do a case laminate for me? And she was so fast to pick up what I was trying to express. She's really good. Like she does pre-mades, and she leans more romantic-y. So it was really fun to like, Brad's cover is super, like it hits the political, it hits the darker,
Mm-hmm.
but then underneath Faye's covers hits that romantic
Mm-hmm.
swirly, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun. It was a fun way to like incorporate both vibes into the books, and then I spent many months fighting with Ingram, trying to convince them to send me new e-proofs and print me new books. And most of my process was just sending them angry emails like, my book has been in processing for 3.5 weeks. Please, can I have an update? Yeah, it would have happened a lot sooner because Faye was so quick to squeeze me in.
Mm-hmm.
And she nailed it on the first proofs that I got. But yeah, if it weren't for Ingram, Brightwash, the new Brightwashes would have been out in the spring, and Brick and Bone would have launched with them right away. But what can you do? So that's the process of updating my edition. Andrew, I blood, sweat, and tears to get these books out.
Yep,
so sorry for
the lot of an author.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the things you don't expect too. Like I was thinking like I'd have to wait a while for art, like because art is one of those games where you get when your artist can fit you in, and that's fair because they're busy. Like it's a big job. But then Ingram, like I've never had these kinds of problems with them. In any of the other books that I've helped with, I've never had these big long. But this summer they've just, I don't know.
So I am taking notes from this that I will design. Like the hardcover's not coming out until I've designed a whole of the
Yeah, and just I think it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we can't expect rush service anymore, so we have to build in these longer lead times. So, we make the choice of, okay, well, if I let there be a delay, I'll publish the ebook at this point and just tell people to expect the delay, which is like the opposite of trad, because that hardcover hits shelves early.
Yep.
But it's just the world we live in where we make these choices. Either the whole process is going to wait till everything's ready, or we just accept.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like I don't know. Yeah, we just and it's still a less of a wait time than trad.
Yes, yeah, that's true, because they're contracting books years in advance, whereas Brick and Bone was 6 months between finishing the book and getting the hardcovers out, so I'll take it.
Yeah, that's really good. Lantern was asking about word count. She said 340 for Brick and Bone.
Yeah, 340. So it's Brightwash was 220,000 words. So Brick and Bone is 3 novels longer than Brightwash, basically. So
well, I was gonna say 2+ of my book could fit in. Yeah, Brick and Bone.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by that.
I keep telling myself if I was smarter, I could have come up with a way to make that book shorter. So I don't know. I think it's just I'm good at talking a lot, so I don't know if it's really a thing to be impressed by.
Well, but it's funny because like we were talking about before that there's such a broad spectrum of what people are looking to read, and for me at least, when I really get into a book or a series, you're afraid of that ending, right? Because then it's over. And so I actually think if you really fall in love with a series, having more of it to reside in and immerse in is cool.
And I think that helps a lot once the suite of books is complete. So once all those 3 books are out, it'll be like a hefty trilogy, and it'll be a trilogy that people can just like, if they want to binge 1 million words, I might get them pretty close. But at the same time, like I don't have the stamina to do that a lot. So probably going forward, I mean, the 3rd book is going to be as long as it has to be to get me to the end. And then going forward, I'm going to have to think about how I think it's a matter of POVs and kind of splitting them into smaller books. Yeah. But that's a problem for later me.
So do you have kind of a projected idea of how long the series is going to be?
Not so much how long, but more like what I always wanted for
Yeah.
this series, because when I drafted that outline that was supposed to be a book to start the idea.
Hmm.
um, and oops, I drafted a trilogy. So it's the trilogy to start the idea. So I'm still wanting to build up to those same things that I came up with, because I love epic fantasy. I love
Yeah.
the war stories that we engage with, and I like the themes of like, when is conflict a necessity, like,
Mm.
and what kind of crimes exist within that conflict, even if you're fighting for the right things. Like, those are
Yeah.
some themes that it's like, oh, I'm like
Yeah.
salivating to get my teeth
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna do it, and I know how it ends, and that's helped me a lot to like, when I was
Mm.
struggling with Brick and Bone. um I'd go off into the wrong direction, and I didn't know, but when I decided, like, no, I'm going to double down on this ending that I originally thought of.
Hmm.
So focusing on that helped me cut away all of the stuff that I didn't need, and kind of reinvigorate myself into like telling the story, because I mean, it's kind of an amalgamation of all of the things that I like in fantasy. Like, I want to tell the story. I don't want to hate this series, and
Right.
so it helped me like come back to life with it a little bit. So I think the best way to tackle it is to have like core trilogies, and then I can play around with standalones that don't touch the characters, but
Mhm.
um, stories that are impacted by this war going on. Um, because although fantasy loves to focus on the conflict, which is valid because it's fascinating, but also I'm super interested in like the fallout of that to people
Mhm.
who aren't necessarily involved. So I'd like to tell some of those stories. So anyway, I'll be doing this for a while.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's
But
really fun when you get a hold of those really meaty themes that you can
yeah,
really spend a lot of time exploring.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, it's kind of a love letter to my reading career,
Yeah.
as a fantasy reader. Like, all the novels that really stuck with me all of these many years later.
Mhm.
Um, like, Brian Stavley's novels, he really examines themes of like young people who hit combat early as young
Mhm.
people, who, those of us in our 30s and 40s and above would still consider these people to be children.
Yep.
But they're conscription age, so off they go to war. And so now they're dealing with PTSD as like 18-year-old kids. And he's so good at just like, like just sinking you into those characters and being
Mm.
like, wow, that's messed up. But also elite soldiers. So
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's also a theme very near and dear to my heart, as you probably
Yeah.
noticed.
Yes,
So,
I did notice. And I'm
yeah.
excited to see where you go with it, because I think, you're doing that thing where you're setting up like tropes that are, and I don't use tropes as a bad thing,
No. Mm-mm.
but tropes that are familiar, but you've got
Mhm.
an angle on it that's fresh. And I love that blend of like, I can kind of see what you're going, but at the same time, I bet you're gonna surprise me, because I bet there's some stuff in there that I'm not gonna see coming, because it has that, I know my genre and I'm here to play with it feeling that I
Mhm.
love so much.
Yeah. Well, and I love earlier because you talked about, bringing in that influence of the thrillers and, oh, like
Yeah.
here I'm a fantasy writer and here's all my influences and they're,
It's all
thrillers and things.
thriller.
But, I
Yeah.
think
Mr.
there's
Frankenstein.
something, yeah, but I mean, I think there's something really magical to that though, because I
Yeah.
think there's something really incredibly fresh and invigorating when you bring things from other genres into
Yeah.
fantasy and say, all right, how can I play with
This
this?
is,
How
yeah.
does this react with a world that has magic in it or in a different,
Yeah, exactly.
different limitations or whatever it is?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'll always advocate for reading as widely as your heart is content. Like, you don't have to stay in fantasy to be a fantasy reader or a fantasy writer. Like, and because, you know, storytelling is universal. Like, the things that storytelling tries to do, it'll bridge across all genres. And knowing what other genres are good at is a great way to decide what you want to be good at as a storyteller.
Yeah. Well, and it also allows you to bring in more generalized emotions. Like, you know, we read a book and we think, oh, I really love this, how grief is handled in this memoir or this, you know, lit fic or whatever it is. How do I recreate what the feelings that are being evoked in me as a reader in a fantasy novel or in my, yeah. It's fun. It's like you said, it's a big sandbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time to pre-debut Krystle and give her some advice, what would you say?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think mostly I would say, like, it's gonna be okay. Like, kid, you're gonna be okay. Because there was so much fear there. And certainly with Brightwash, only at the very last minute did I let that book express as much queerness as it does. And I wish, my only regret, in spite of all of the criticisms that came to it, my only regret is that I didn't make that decision sooner and give that expression more space. Because it was like, I was days before sending it to my final editor, right? And I was like, I can't do it without a little bit more. I can't make a career out of, you know, forcing Joshua to be totally straight in the canon. So it was like a mad scramble to, like, put little things in so that as the story expands, I could touch on it again, instead of, you know, being chained by, anyway, that choice. So that's my only real regret, is like, it's gonna be okay. I was so convinced that it was going to be too vulnerable and too exposed, but what I found instead is that the community embraced where I was trying to go, and lifted me up and supported me. And I wish that I had known that that was going to happen, because I might have done, I mean, maybe I would have done exactly the same thing, but I would have done it knowing I was going to be okay, instead of doing it as like, well, it's, I guess I'll just torch my career already. You know, like, just the dread that was in my head. Like, and I can't even articulate why. It was so scary to do that on the page.
It's really hard to put that vulnerability in front of such a large public sphere. That's really hard. Yeah, but I mean, I don't have anything but love for the community, for the way that I was embraced so completely by, you know, I remember thinking, like, what would Nick Borelli think, like, because he was a friend at the time, but, like, he's never been anything but supportive. So I almost feel guilty for doubting people. And I wish that I had known that I would be caught by people when I leaned in. Like, there was a safety net.
It was it was a trust fall. And they caught me, so completely that I now have the courage to do a lot more with Frankie's series. And it's going to be another trust fall, but I feel a lot more secure in knowing, like, no, people are pretty good. People are pretty great. So I wish I could have told myself that people were better than I could have thought, and I was going to be okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of trust involved as an author, both in yourself, I think, and also in, you know,
and it's such a weird balance of, like, total insecurity and perfect ego, where it's like, I have a story that the world needs, but also please do not look at me.
Please be nice. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, we talked about that a little bit in the imposter syndrome episodes, where we, that kind of, that balance is really difficult because you are convinced that nobody's going to love you, and also that they need to love you.
Right. And I think it's important to have both sides of that, because it's like that, it makes us open to pivoting into assessing, am I making the best book that I can? And so we need a little bit of that self-doubt, but at the same time, we need a little bit of that ego to hold as a shield of like, no, my book, I did the best I can. So, and finding the perfect 50-50 split there is a challenge.
It is a big challenge. And I feel like, it doesn't, I've talked to people that it's like, I've done interviews where it's the person's first interview ever versus, talk to authors who have been doing this for, 30 plus years. And that's such a similar thread through the whole,
it never goes away.
It never goes away. And I think there's some comfort in that, almost knowing that, this is a normal thing and it's okay that I feel some doubt sometimes. Andrew Meredith and I often will text each other and have a little bit of a meltdown about, are we having a quitting day today? Yeah, we're having a quitting day today. Tomorrow we'll be fine.
Quitting days. Oh man. Yeah, that's
Yep. The day when every draft and every scrap of paper you've ever touched goes in the garbage can for a little while, and then you get it back out and you keep going.
I hit a lot of those days with Brick and Bone. And it's part of why I've pivoted to having Frankie available in the background, because I never want to quit. Some quitting days are normal, but I never want to get to the point where I hate this series. And I was close. Because I felt so trapped. And there was also like this weird feeling of like, so because I've been writing about Touchwood for so long, I always had the opportunity to reboot stories for him if I didn't like the genre that I was writing at the time. And so as Brick and Bone was coming to publication, there was this wild panic of like, this is it. I'm locked in. I can't reboot him. Like, this is it. And there's also this feeling of like, I have to do these books credit, or he sinks, and that's on me. And it was interfering with my ability to enjoy what I'm doing, which is like, why am I here then?
Right.
So then that's when I let myself play with this new idea of Frankie, because if I have the opportunity to pivot into something else, then I can give my relationship with this guy a break. Like he doesn't have to, like, the weight of my career is no longer on his shoulders. I can always write a different book. And then I like him more. So quit days are normal, but there's a threshold where it's like, okay, you got to change something.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like I even discovered this with, because I started writing the sequel to Phase pretty shortly after finishing it. And I kind of ground to a halt about a third of the way in. And I put it down for a while. And I think there's something really important to knowing yourself well enough to know, am I ready for this yet? Yeah. Is this the right time, or do I need
at the skill level? Yeah,
exactly. And knowing now after working on Blood, like I wasn't ready for Bloodstones before writing Phase. Absolutely not. And even before joining this community, I wasn't ready for Bloodstones. I needed the community to get my butt moving and like actually feel like I had a place to land, once it came out. And knowing yourself well enough to say, you know what, I need a pivot here for a minute, because otherwise this is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah, because it'll just stack burnouts on top of each other, and then you're out of the game. And it's like, I'm here because I love telling stories. I'm here specifically because I love telling stories about Tasha specifically. Like, so if I scorch that earth, like, what's left for me? So I had to build in, like you said, those pivot points so that the heat didn't build up quite so intensely. And now I'm super jazzed about writing book 3. Like I've only been taking a break for a couple of months, because it's like I launched I launched at the end of April, but at the end of June, I sent the audio to Podium. And there was an extra little sneaky proof in there. So, and then after that in June, I took a break. So July, August, and I guess some of June, I took a break. So that's only 3 months, and now I'm ready,
Yep.
And if I had given myself that time last year, I probably wouldn't have, nearly quit, but,
live and learn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have some new projects coming down the pipeline. We're back into book 3. You have Frankie. That's being the works. So what's like immediately next for you as an author?
Probably immediately next is the project with Fletcher.
Mm-hmm.
So Fletcher and I have teamed up on like kind of an ode to old school heroic fantasy. So, we're leaning really heavily into our oldest influences, but also it's still us, and it's 2023. So it's, it'll be a little bit different than, but it's, the really old war hero goes back to the city to defend it one more time. And it's been it's been a lot of fun to work on it with him. We're not super far yet, but I suspect once we're through all of the summer chaos that we've both been facing, it'll pick up pretty quick, because we can churn out chapters all pretty quickly. Because the nice thing about working with him is we can both work through our blocks a lot faster, because we have somebody to talk to who knows what we're writing about. So when we're like, I'm a little bit concerned about this, it's not days and days and days of me going, is it even a problem? Am I being a hypochondriac? It's just, hey, Fletcher, what do you think? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay, let's fix it. And then it's done.
Right, right, yep.
When we're able to focus on it, we can produce pretty quickly. So I suspect that'll be the first thing that's finished in the near future. Otherwise, the Anatomy of Fear comes out in November, so that's exciting. The Laszlo story. And then more Dominion. I'm probably gonna I'd like to say I'm going to publish Frankie next year, but at the same time, I don't want to put a deadline on him.
Just see what happens.
Who knows? But it's nice to have him as like, okay, I'm stuck and I'm annoyed with book 3. I'm going to go spend a month with Frankie and just chill. And it was really nice to do that. So I've kept him as like, okay, I'm not going to finish this. I'm going to keep it as my special little toy to play with. TikTok. So I suspect it's going to log jam a lot of stuff, and I'll hit a couple of books at the same time. But I mean, it wouldn't be me if it wasn't utterly chaotic.
It works, right? Yeah. Well, and I think it's nice too to have a little bit of a stockpile of knowing where you're going next, and you have multiple options, and so, well, I wish you best of luck with all of those projects.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you very much once again for graciously spending your time on my channel.
I forgot to plug really quickly.
Go for it.
Paperback giveaway with there's 9 of us in total. Andy put together a bunch of us, Holly, and I should have had it pulled up. But anyway, there's 9 of us in total. It's all Grimdark or Grimdark adjacent authors. We're giving away a total of 27 paperbacks. If you go to my socials, I've retweeted a bunch of stuff. But you can also go to Andy Palinquin. He'll have a lot more information because he's very organized and professional. And Tiago's in it as well. Holly Tinsley's in it. I talked about her. So we're gonna be talking about it for the next couple of weeks, because it's running until, I want to say, the 25th. So there's quite a lot of time.
And your socials are all on your website, right?
Yeah. So
which is down in the description.
Platforms. I'm on most platforms just as me. So Krystle Matar, if you search on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Google, you'll find me. Because the spelling of my first name is weird, which is great. It made it really easy to find all this stuff. Yeah, so it's September today to the 25th. So there's lots of time to enter the giveaways. We're shipping paperbacks all over the world. It's open. Canada, US, UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand.
Nice.
So yeah,
nice.
There's a good chance to win a paperback, and we'll ship out some book plates and some stuff as well. So
are you guys giving away like 9 books to 3 different winners, or you're just giving out 27 different winners?
Yeah, 27 different winners.
Wow.
And then yeah, so and we'll ship them to everywhere covered by the website giveaway terms. And so we're each aiming for 3 books each that we're sending, and there's a lot of chances to win.
Awesome. Yeah, so everybody that's watching the replay or in the chat down in the description below, you can find a direct link to Amazon to check out Legacy of the Brightwash, and also Krystle's website. So go check those out and find her on Twitter. And I know I've been seeing lots of retweets of the giveaway around Twitter. So you'll probably stumble upon it if you're in the community pretty easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, congratulations with that. That's really exciting. So everybody go and sign up for that. And yeah, best of luck with all of the writing and enjoyment of the writing.
Yes, I think that's important to remember as we chug along this weird little career. We're here because we like books. Don't forget.
Yeah. Right. You have to like the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read what you want, or write what you want to read.
Yes. Yeah, because you'll have to read it about 1 million times.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for hanging out with us. Again, go check out Krystle's website and book down in the description below and get started there. And Krystle, thank you again for gracing my channel.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. See you guys later.